Hello, friends of YouTube. Recently, I thought about book clubs and popular books that people read in big groups or masses, and then they all share their opinions online of certain books. And then I realized I wanted to do something that I haven't read before, and something that's related that I may have read in high school. And I have a lot of stories of just 10th grade language arts. And I'll get to that in another video later on when I read these books. I'll read Scorpions first, and then I'll read There Are No Children Here, which, I think in 93 or 94, Oprah. Not that I'm a fan of Oprah, because you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Whatever. Oprah was in the made-for-TV movie There Are No Children Here. And it was basically about the harsh, everyday life is a battle when you live in public housing projects in a dangerous big urban city. It was the infamous Cabrini Green, but I think this is a little bit different than what the movie portrayed. Because the movie was based on the book, but I know the book is a lot different. Okay. So I didn't really ever read There Are No Children Here. I think my high school library, my first high school, there was a copy, but it was really old, tattered. It was like a library circulating copy with a hardcover and the dust jacket in the plastic wrap, and some of the pages were torn. I think some pages were missing. And the book selection in that library had been very neglected when I arrived as a 9th grader, so it wasn't worth checking out. And instead, I ended up checking out some novel about a man who was in sharecropping in the 1940s and 50s and 60s in the Deep South. And it was called, the word that I can't say because I'm white. But that was the title. That was the title of a novel that I read when I was in 9th grade. On my own time. Not assigned. And it was called Nigger. I don't remember the author. I don't remember the year it was published. I remember it was about the same size as this book, like, dimension-wise. And it had the cover art was very dark and not gritty, but lacking in details, and there was only like a silhouette of an older black fellow, maybe in his 50s or 60s, on the cover, and then there was one of those, award things on it, and it was called Nigger. And it was a novel about a man's life of working in sharecropping when all of his former ancestors had been slaves and then still did sharecropping and other indentured servitude. And it was interesting to read because it wasn't like reading 12 Years a Slave, but it was still, which I did buy 12 Years a Slave recently. I've yet to read it. I'd say the best African American literature book or series I've read in my lifetime would be Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. And the 9 sequels that went along with it. And I remember there was not 1 but 2 made-for-TV movies. And I could only get them through the library because they were that freaking old. The first time I only was able to find them on VHS. And then the second time I found the first movie on DVD and the second on VHS. Yeah. They weren't even featurette movie theater movies. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry was very much a made for TV movie. Might have been on CBS. That's what I think. I don't know. It definitely wasn't Disney. So, anyways, I read this in 10th grade against my will. I was in a general education, mixed ability language arts class. My daily performance was high enough to be in the honors, but my standardized test scores said, "You're below expectations." So, you have to be in the regular class. And that regular class was, I'd say, 1/3 at or above grade level. So it was 10th grade language arts, and okay, I'm at the 6-minute mark. Babbling, rambling, ranting. To be honest, I remember the version we read had pencil sketch pictures in it. Yeah. I had a different edition back in high school. It had the pencil sketch pictures in it, like you have in the Boxcar Children remake books. The same style of the pencil sketch. That was popular in a lot of 90s kids' chapter books. That the edition that my teacher got. The cover was more like red, with a red border. Anyways. The class was like 1/3 at or above grade level, 1/3 in the, like, 5th to 8th grade reading level, writing skills, abilities. And the other third of the class was, unfortunately, like anywhere from a 1st grade to a 4th grade reading level. And unfortunately, the two teachers, the head teacher and the assistant teacher who was working on his midlife crisis, I'm going to become a teacher, bachelor's degree, they decided to do a book that was more so aimed at the Black, overage, super seniors who were in that class. And their reading level was not that great. And I'll talk more about that in another video, but they read in the way that, their parents never read to them ever growing up, and any books in their homes that they grew up with were more like clutter, pushed to the back of a shelf or set aside for taking up space in a box. That's what I always imagined in my head when I listened to them read out loud and struggle to put periods. They would be like, Tito started cogging. Jamal hated it when Tito cogged. It seemed as if there was something in Tito's chest that made him sell, that he was trying to get out. When he cogged really hard, Tito's eyes would roll around and glisten with his efforts. Jamal put his arm around Tito's shoulders. That's how they read. They didn't have good out loud reading skills. It was as if their parents had never read to them, taken them to libraries, gotten them a library card, never read them at bedtime stories as little kids before they could read. It was just so broken. And English wasn't a second language to them. They were just unfortunate souls who should have been in IEP reading classes instead of regular language arts, because they couldn't meet the expectations. And so that's why the teacher decided, I'm going to reach them. I'm going to reach them so hard because I'm a white savior teacher. unfortunately, it did nothing besides annoy and bore and irritate myself and the rest of our classmates who could read at or above grade level. And also, I took this book home one day from school, even though we weren't allowed to, because they were school copies and they didn't trust students. But I was trustworthy enough. I took it home, and I finished reading it. We were going through like 2 pages a day. 2 pages a day, out loud, in class. That's something you do in kindergarten to 2nd grade. But a chapter book, not even a novel, a middle school level chapter book in 10th grade with 15 to 19-year-olds. And you're doing 2 pages out loud a day because a teacher doesn't want students to take the book home because half the students can't be trusted to even bring it back, and everyone else has to suffer. Including the ones who can read at or above grade level, aka high school level literature, or even college level literature, such as Holocaust novels, or slavery novels, or Roots. Not exactly Wuthering Heights, but in 10th grade I was reading like a lot of World War II Holocaust concentration camp, hiding in attics type of novels. Yeah, so anyways, I'm going to do a comparison of Scorpions to There Are No Children Here, a middle school level book compared to more of a high school / college level book. Novel. Yeah. An adult age-appropriate novel to read in high school or in college. And a book that was aimed maybe at 5th to 8th grade. Although back when I read it in high school, it felt like it was on a 4th grade level. But now that I see it as an adult, a publication version without those pencil sketch pictures, I guess maybe a 5th grade level, but just kind of has that same formatting as with the simple narration and the simple actions of the characters in the sentences, as like Boxcar Children mysteries, that were published in the 90s and early 2000s. The ones that were published more so by Random House or Scholastic rather than the actual writers themselves. So anyways, it looks like that. It looks like the generic late 90s, early 2000s kids chapter book with 130 plus pages, whatever. It's not very entertaining and easy to read books like these when you're well past that ability, because it's just so tedious and slow, and there is very little detail or description or vocabulary that makes you think. And if you take 2 pages or 3 pages every 50-minute class period with a lot of behavioral issues and poor classroom management and a lot of the N-word thrown around in between sentences when they're trying to read out loud because they can't just shut the fuck up and read. That was hard for me to deal with in high school, and my mom, she shadowed me when every year of high school, my mom went to school with me 2 times a year. So a grand total of 8 times in high school. Twice in 9th grade, twice in 10th grade, twice in 11th grade, twice in 12th grade to see what my classes were like, to see the students, to see the behaviors, to see the things that I had to endure that were either too easy for me, too challenging, too hard. Teachers who were crappy, teachers who didn't like technology or changing times, and students who wanted to do nothing but destroy the educational environment of a school and destroy other people's interests in writing and reading and assignments and history. Miscreants. Whatever. Party animals. Who would show up just to be rabble-rousers. Rabble-rousers and rapscallions. Every single school day, scallywags. You see, that's vocabulary that you learn in high school literature. Not in this 5th to 8th grade basic simple sentences chapter book. When one of the older versions has like pencil sketch illustrations. It was just painful. And so I'm going to read it again. And then I'm going to read There Are No Children Here. And I'm going to do a comparison contrast series of rants. Probably I'll try to keep them like under 8 minutes. Just to show what the parallels were between certain themes or elements, different plot lines or character flaws or personality traits or events in the stories that are similar to each other. Okay, that's a really long video. I'm at the almost 17-minute mark talking about a book I resent. More so the teacher I resented, and I once thought to myself in my head during that whole 4.5, 5 months of reading this 2 or 3 pages every class period. I slept a lot in that class. I've always slept in school, but that one I did a lot of sleeping. And I only paid attention for the daily writing prompt. And when we studied the Harlem Renaissance, which was kind of actually really cool. But when this book happened, for nearly 4.5, 5 months, I slept through most of it and only woke up for group discussions or daily writing prompt, or if it was suddenly my turn to read. And then the teachers would shoot me down and tell me to stop reading, so that way someone else could read. And it'd take nearly 10 minutes to get through one page out loud. Whereas I took like 2 minutes to get through a page out loud. That's not acceptable in high school. If you're taking 10 minutes to get through one page out loud, and you're in high school, I'm not saying the schools failed you, I'm saying your parents failed you. And that's the kind of kids that, the teacher thought he could save and improve their reading skills by giving them a book about people like them. Black kids who want to act all hood. That's what they were. And he thought, if I give them a book they can identify with, maybe their reading will improve. No, it didn't. They probably just resented it. Because he was kind of talking down to them, and the book talks down to the black reader as well. It was just crap. I can't wait to read There Are No Children Here. I can't wait to read this in about a day and a half. Which, when I did take the book home from school, I didn't even finish it when I got home from school. I finished it on the school bus, which was a 45-minute ride to school and to home. And then I wrote down some stuff in my notebook about the chapters and the events and the parallels between what the book portrayed and the everyday environment of my high school, with a lot of unfortunate black kids and teens who didn't have the reading skills to succeed for whatever ages they were. And after dinner, and at dinner time, I told my parents, after dinner, I have some schoolwork I want to present to you that I kind of assigned to myself. And I gave them the spiel. Treated it almost like a mock court with me just as the one lonely judge. And no jury. And my dad was appalled. And my mom was annoyed that I inconvenienced her from watching her Fox News. And this was in 2006. This was in 2007. My mom had just recently switched from CNN to Fox News. My dad was appalled at everything that I was having to suffer and endure in school because of this, that the teachers were favoring just the lowest rating skilled students over everyone else in the classroom and wasting my time of classroom time that could be focused on other elements of literature and reading and writing and historical writing. And he believed me. He didn't have to shadow me like my mom wanted to. But then my mom saw what I was enduring and suffering, and she admitted that I was right. But then she also admitted that, she could have stayed home all day, watched Fox News, and she would have been happier to do that. So, basically, I got screwed over by some crappy teachers, crappy principal who didn't care, and still hasn't retired. Still principal of that school 15 years later. And we could have read There Are No Children Here. We could have been broken up into two groups. The ones who couldn't read at grade level could have read Scorpions. The ones who could read above an 8th grade level could have read There Are No Children Here. And did Mr. Kahn, did Mr. Edelman make that recognition in their teaching skills? No. They didn't, and they didn't care. They cared more about being white savior teachers to the hood rat black kids who couldn't read a lick on a job application to save their own lives, let alone take 10 minutes to get through a single page of out loud reading between 3 students. All because their parents never valued books in their entire lives of parenting and raising kids. And you don't need a bedtime story. You're fine. I don't know. It just seemed so shitty. I once thought in my head, it was a fantasy I had in my head, I even wrote it down on paper, to find that teacher's address, buy one of these books at Barnes & Noble of Scorpions, and then rip all the pages out and leave it on his doorstep. I never did that. It was a weird revenge, resentment, angry emotion I felt. But at the same time, feeling that emotion of wanting to shred this with my brute strength, I felt satisfying. And you know what? The emotions were satisfying enough. I didn't actually have to do it in real life. But it was still an issue in my head all these years. Why couldn't we have read both books? The more developing readers could have read Scorpions, and the more advanced readers in the class could have read There Are No Children Here, and could have had some debates or some back and forth discussions based on thematic elements. Nah, it was too much work. Too much work for those teachers to make such a contrasting assignment or theme, syllabus. They didn't care. They only cared about being white saviors. Freedom writers. That's what they cared about. Stand and deliver. Freedom Riders. Dangerous Minds. Every white savior teacher movie I witnessed and I experienced in 10th grade. And it sucked. Remember that white boy in Aaron Gurrell's class in the Freedom Riders? And he just kept on slumped in his chair, just feeling resentful that he was reading at grade level, he was doing things age appropriate, and everyone else was just like holding him back. That's how I felt. And that the teachers could have cared less about who was being held back, and more so by trying to get the other kids ahead without enough time to do it. And that's how I felt. I felt trapped. So eventually I'm going to read both these books and then do note-taking and writing ideas and thematic elements that are similar or in both books, and then compare them to each other. Obviously, this is more age-appropriate for high school and college and adults, and this one's more appropriate, I'd say, for like maybe 6th or 7th grade, maybe 8th grade at the latest. But anyways, okay, I'm at 26 minutes. I said this at 16 minutes. Yeah, it's a long rant. Oh well, I'm done. Thanks for listening to my rant about how much I hate white savior teachers and their attempts at trying to include the struggling kids, and yet holding back all the other kids from achieving their fullest potential. Just because you want to pat yourself on the back at the end of the school year to say, hey, I helped 3 kids out of 80 to improve their reading skills. Even though they'll probably never pick up a book on their own volition for the rest of their life. Fucking stupid. I know. 27 minutes. I just can't stop, can I? I hate this book. Not because of the book, but because why? Why I hate the book. It's a symbol of teachers who tried too hard to save a handful of kids who just a handful of teenage boys who just preferred to hang out, shoot the breeze, and misbehave all day. They could have cared less about a book. And yet, everyone else in the class could have benefited from reading something like this. At the high school level, at the AP level, at the honors level, at the college level. I don't even know what the honors class read for 10th grade honors. I don't know what they read. In 9th grade, I had to read Things Fall Apart by something, Tino Achebe or whatever. It was not just African American literature. It took place in Africa, and it was like tribe versus tribe. It was a challenging read. It made me emotionally upset to read some of the things in it, because I was not ready to read a book that had a lot of graphic descriptions of rape when I was in 9th grade. But then also in 9th grade, I read Lord of the Flies twice, because I was in 2 different language arts classes, first semester and second semester. Lord of the Flies was hard enough. A book about various African tribes battling each other and raping and pillaging and cannibalizing each other was a little bit too much. I also had to read Homer the Odyssey in 9th grade. Yeah, that was a lot on me. And then 10th grade, very underwhelmed, annoyed, and irritated with a middle school level book. aimed at maybe 5 kids in a single class out of 30. And the other 25 kids couldn't read something more appropriate. Okay, now I'm at 30-minute mark. Damn it! Okay, now I'm gonna stop. Stop. Stop.